The first time I asked her to marry me, I wasn't standing beneath a sunset or holding a diamond ring. I was sitting on a weathered wooden bench outside a small rehabilitation center in Asheville, North Carolina, with trembling hands, an anxious heart, and a future that felt as fragile as the autumn leaves drifting around us. I had waited 4 years for that moment, believing love alone could heal every wound. I looked into Grace's hopeful eyes and quietly asked her to marry me tomorrow. She smiled through tears, but instead of saying yes, she gave me 3 conditions that shattered every expectation I had, and changed the course of both our lives forever. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories that remind us how powerful love and grace can truly be. My name is Nathan, and until my early 30s, I believed success could replace relationships. I worked long hours as an architect in Chicago, chasing promotions while quietly ignoring birthdays, family dinners, and friendships. When my father became seriously ill, I realized how much of life I had postponed. I left my career behind and moved to North Carolina to help care for him during his recovery. It was there that I met Grace, a volunteer music instructor who spent every Saturday encouraging patients to rediscover hope through simple piano lessons. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that drew people toward her, yet there was always a trace of sadness in her smile, as though she understood pain better than happiness. Over the next several years our friendship grew through ordinary moments. We repaired old furniture for the community center, organized food drives during the holidays, and spent countless evenings talking about family, faith, and the dreams we had almost abandoned. I slowly realized I wasn't simply falling in love with Grace, I was becoming the kind of person I had always wanted to be because of her example. She never measured people by what they owned but by how faithfully they showed up for others. That lesson transformed me more than any achievement ever had. When my father regained his health and encouraged me to build my own future again, I finally gathered enough courage to ask Grace to marry me. Her answer surprised me completely. She told me she would only marry me if I accepted 3 promises that could never be broken. The first was that every Thanksgiving would be spent serving families who had nowhere else to go before we celebrated ourselves. The second was that her younger sister Hannah, who had a developmental disability, would always have a home with us whenever she needed one. The third was the hardest of all. She wanted me to forgive the man who had caused her family years of financial hardship through a dishonest business deal, because she refused to begin a marriage while carrying bitterness into the future. The first 2 promises felt challenging but beautiful. The third one exposed a weakness I had hidden even from myself. The man Grace spoke about was someone I had already met through local business circles, and I knew how deeply her family had suffered because of his choices. Everything inside me believed forgiveness meant pretending injustice had never happened. For weeks I wrestled with anger, confusion, and pride. I questioned whether I was strong enough to love someone whose greatest expectation was not wealth, comfort, or status, but mercy. One Sunday morning our church organized volunteers to renovate several homes damaged by severe storms. By unexpected coincidence, the final house belonged to the very man I struggled to forgive. Age had humbled him. His business had collapsed years earlier, his health had declined, and he now lived alone surrounded by unfinished repairs he could no longer complete himself. Watching neighbors quietly replace broken flooring and repair his porch without demanding anything in return forced me to confront something I had never understood. Forgiveness was not declaring that the past had been acceptable. It was refusing to let yesterday continue stealing tomorrow. That afternoon I walked over, shook his hand, and wished him peace. No speeches, no dramatic confrontation, no applause. Just one simple act that finally released the burden I had carried without realizing it. For the first time in years, Grace saw a different expression on my face. It wasn't victory. It was freedom. The following morning I returned to the same wooden bench outside the rehabilitation center. Grace was already waiting with 2 cups of coffee. Before I could speak, she smiled with tears in her eyes because she already knew my answer. We didn't need expensive ceremonies or extravagant celebrations to prove our love. Months later, surrounded by family, friends, Hannah's joyful laughter, and neighbors whose lives had become intertwined with ours, we exchanged our vows in a small white church nestled among the Blue Ridge Mountains. Every Thanksgiving since then has begun by serving others. Hannah's room remains ready whenever she visits. And forgiveness became the strongest foundation our marriage could ever have. Before this story comes to its close, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced a choice where forgiveness or compassion completely changed your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might encourage someone who needs hope today. Years have passed, and our home has never been defined by perfect circumstances. We have faced setbacks, disappointments, and unexpected challenges like every family. Yet every difficult season reminds us of those three conditions. They were never obstacles standing between two people in love. They were invitations to build a life centered on service, family, and grace. Looking back, asking Grace to marry me tomorrow was the easiest question I ever asked. Choosing to become the man worthy of her answer became the greatest journey of my life. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you that kindness and forgiveness can transform ordinary lives, please consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who could use a little hope today, subscribing for more uplifting stories, and leaving a comment to let us know what part stayed with you the most. Sometimes one heartfelt story can become the beginning of someone else's second chance.